The honourable member for Yukon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm certainly pleased today to stand in this House and add my comments to Bill S-3, an act to amend the Coastal Fisheries Protection Act. We've heard today from many members of this House on the merits of these amendments, and I'll be using my time today to reiterate the need for these amendments and highlight a few of the key points that have been discussed. As we've heard, the purpose of this bill is to enable Canada to ratify the international agreement on port state measures to prevent, deter, and eliminate illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. As a former conservation officer myself and as an ex officio fisheries officer, I understand that a strong, sustainable fishing industry supports jobs and economic growth in rural communities, and indeed in all communities in this country. In Canada, the seafood industry is a major economic driver. Canadian fishermen work hard and play by the rules. Our country has a rigorous fisheries management system and measures that are in place to ensure that our fisheries are sustainable and will be present for future generations. Unfortunately, not all of the world's oceans are so well protected, and while Canada's current Coastal Fisheries Protection Act and extensive catch monitoring programs already deter illegal fishing vessels from entering our ports, this bill will further expand our powers to prevent illegal fish from entering the Canadian marketplace and support the global effort to stop illegal fishing. Mr. Speaker, I can't stress enough that globally, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing is an issue of grave concern. The Port State Measures Agreement deals with the worldwide problem of illegal fishing, which has serious economic and environmental consequences to Canadians. Fish are a highly valued commodity, and as such, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing has rapidly become a new global challenge. Illegal fishing operators gain economic advantage over legitimate fish harvesters through lower costs of operation by circumventing national laws and regulations. They also undermine conservation and management measures of regional fishery management organizations and other international standards, often including those for labor and safety conditions for the crew, for the men and the women who work aboard those vessels. Illegal fish in the global market can depress prices for fish products from legitimate fish harvesters. Canadian fishermen feel the impacts of illegal fishing, including unfair competition and price fluctuations created by illegal producers flooding the international markets. Canadian seafood exports are worth $4 billion annually, and 85% of all of our fish harvested is exported. Therefore, Canada has a major economic stake in ensuring that illegal fish are kept off the global market. We need to continue to be leaders in the international fight against threats to our fishing industry in order to maintain a fair and stable market environment for our high-quality fish and seafood exports. Canada has a well-regulated fisheries. We're not the problem when it comes to illegal fishing, but we can be part of the global situation and global solution. By strengthening the Coastal Fisheries Protection Act, we will protect this vital resource and support the international fight against this global scourge. On this side of the House, we stand by our commitments. Canada signed the Port State Measures Act agreement in 2010, and as demonstrated by this bill being brought forward today, we will follow through on this commitment. Mr. Speaker, the amendments to the Coastal Fisheries Protection Act will also expand our capacity to deal with illegally caught fish from other jurisdictions. If a vessel is fishing outside of the controls required by a regional fish management organization or international norms, then fish caught by that vessel would be subject to intervention under this act. We will now have the ability to deal with illegal fish product imports in an efficient way that supports the intent of the Port State Measures Agreement. We are proud of the already strong port access regime for foreign fishing vessels. Among other measures, Canada does not allow entry to vessels which are on the illegal, unreported, and unregulated lists of the Northwest Atlantic Fisheries Organization or the International Commission for the Conservation of Atlantic Tunas. These lists are a key tool for combating illegal fishing globally. Included on these lists are fishing vessels and any craft that helps fishing vessels engage in illegal acts. For example, crafts providing fuel, transshipping products, or packing materials will be covered and included in the list. With these proposed amendments, we are building on the already strong legislation to protect fishermen and women and our national economy. Arrangements have already been undertaken among several regional fisheries management organizations to share such lists so that members can take the necessary action to deny port entry or services to these listed vessels. This makes illegal fishing more difficult and expensive for criminals. The proposed changes to the Coastal Fisheries Protection Act set out tough prohibitions against the importation of illegally caught fish and other living marine organisms. Contravention of these provisions would be an offense under the amended Coastal Fisheries Protection Act, with strict penalties specified under the Act. Together, these measures will help dry up the profits from illegal fishing activities. Fisheries and Oceans, in close collaboration with the Canadian Border Service Agency, will carry out enforcement with a view to protect legitimate cross-border trade of fish and seafood products. Preventing illegally taken fish and seafood products from entering Canadian markets is also a priority for Canada's trading partners, such as the United States and the European Union. Controls at the border for illegal fish harvests will bolster our reputation as a responsible nation and a responsible trading partner. As a member of the Fisheries Committee, during our study of the bill, additional technical amendments were introduced to further strengthen this bill. As to the first new amendment introduced, it will enable Canada to make regulations that could specifically document requirements for imports of fish and seafood products from fisheries management organizations to which Canada is not a party of. This is a practical measure, as these amendments will address the situation of illegally harvested seafood parts from parts of the world where Canada does not fish, but from which we import. Should a regional fisheries management organization in another region implement certification measures, we will have the authority to also require this documentation. This is a common sense measure and a common sense amendment, which we heard on committee, and we're pleased to put that forward. This will also ensure consistency and improve the sustainability of fisheries throughout the world while we're protecting legitimate trade. The second amendment is a technical common sense amendment to ensure that vessels or goods that have been seized are not returned to the offender upon conviction. Mr. Speaker, the bill, along with the additional amendments presented in the committee, report to the Coastal Fisheries Protection Act that are before you, will strengthen and clarify Canada's domestic rules and reinforce our leadership in the global fight against harmful fishing. This bill demonstrates Canada's commitment to addressing the global challenge of combating illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing by ensuring a modern legislative framework. I'm proud to be part of a government that's taking action against this global problem, which impacts our fishermen and fisherwomen here at home. We cannot tolerate the illegal exploitation of the world's great resources. Thank you for your time, Mr. Speaker, and I look forward to any questions our members have.
Questions and comment? Question come on tide. The honourable member for Dartmouth Cole Harbour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the my colleague and member of the Fisheries Committee. Appreciate his contribution to this debate. I wonder if he would share with me, if he shares with me, my disappointment in the fact that this is an important piece of legislation. It does enact a legislative an international agreement that was signed by nations, and it's important that it get done. That we deal with this issue. I'll talk about this in more detail in my intervention, but this was first introduced and into the Senate as Bill S-13 and it passed third reading there March the 7th, 2013. 2013, over 2 years ago. I wonder if he shares my disappointment, the fact that this important piece of legislation has languished so long in the back rooms or wherever it languishes and has not been adequately and dealt with in a timely fashion here in the House of Commons.
The honourable member for Yukon.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for both his intervention here and look forward to his remarks later in the day when he intervenes and his contributions to our Fisheries Committee. Of course, as we move these forward, and Mr. Speaker, you heard in my intervention how critical unreported, unregulated fisheries are, not just to Canada but globally. And when we have a number of key partners involved in this, some 25 states signing on to this agreement, 11 of which I think have completed the signatories to this now, it's important that we do get this right. It's important that we take the time, which I think we did, and he's a member of the Fisheries Committee, and we certainly engaged in a pretty detailed committee review of this. We were able to ask for technical advice and get proper input to make sure that we had the right piece of legislation going forward, so we can preserve and protect the integrity of Canada's fishing industry, both our imports and exports. And that's not something that obviously should be taken lightly or rushed through. And I think this House, the Senate, and our committee have given it due consideration, as reflected by the amendments that are now being put forward here today. So I think we've done a good job. I think the committee's done a good job, and I think Canada can be proud of this, and our industry can be confident that this piece of legislation moving forward is going to leave Canada at the forefront of tackling this very serious issue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? Question commentaire, the honourable member for Winnipeg North.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to pick up on this, the former question, or the previous question. And that is that we need to recognize not only the fishing industry here in Canada, but to recognize as a whole, as a world, we have actually failed to, what many would suggest to you, could have been a stronger leadership coming from Canada. Given just the vastness, the coastlines, in the interest and the strong potential that Canada could be playing at the international scene, and at the end of the day, the reason why we have this legislation before us is because of an international agreement, and so it's more so a follow through from that agreement. And my question to the member is, does he not believe that Canada could actually be playing a stronger leadership role, not only here in Canada, but more so in the world when it comes to the important issue of world fisheries?
The honourable member for Yukon, you have about 50 seconds.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. It's an important one indeed, and he raises a great point about Canada and the geography. There are 25 states that need to sign this of the FAO that are required. 11 have done so, so we're not quite at the halfway point yet. Canada is moving in there. But Canada is such a massive nation, and the member did point this out, that our coastline is so significant. And when you look at what our not just primary law enforcement agencies are doing to deter, detect, prevent, and enforce regulations on such a broad coastline in Canada, I think they should be commended. In Canada as a nation, as we look at signing these agreements, we need to make sure that we have the legislation right, the tools are appropriate and proper, not just for those agencies, but in context of the geography in which they have to work. Canada has to do land-based patrols, area surveillance patrols, sea patrols, dockside monitoring, electric monitoring, all kinds of things from coast to coast to coast in this country. It's not an easy task, but they're doing a great job, and Canada is showing significant leadership on this file simply because of the operating conditions that we work in. We're in a vastly different pool of regulatory regimes here in Canada, and I think we're doing a wonderful job at it, and I think other nations can look to Canada to see how we're able to deter, prevent, and detect unregulated, unreported fishing with such big boundaries to protect in our country, and the men and women that are doing that job are doing a fantastic job. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.